Hello and welcome back to Classic Times. Today I'll be going through stage 7 of the Cambridge Latin course, and I'll be recapping verbs and going over the new topic of suppressed subjects. Okay, let's begin. So first of all, we'll start off with a quick recap of the perfect tense. So the perfect tense, as we've already covered in previous videos, is used for a complete action that has happened in the past. For example, he ran. This is distinct from the imperfect tense, which describes an ongoing action which has happened in the past. For example, he was running. So the perfect tense, as you already know, can be recognised with the letter V before the ending. But in some verbs, they don't have a V, so you can also recognise it by the letters S, U or X before the ending. So try to remember V sucks to recognise a perfect tense verb. And as already discussed, they can be translated using an English word ending in ed quite often, like the example of the verb to enter, as I've got in the table below. So the endings, just to consolidate, are e isti it, imus istis errant. I'll leave the slide up for a couple more moments just in case you want to go back over those endings. So here is a useful summary table for remembering verb endings. Essentially, you need to try to remember the acronym moist, must, isn't. And as you can see from the table, it incorporates all of the 3 tenses that we've met so far. Feel free to pause the video and just go over these endings if you want some further consolidation. Again, let's look at the 3 tenses we've met so far. So the present tense is a verb happening in the present time. For example, I am carrying or I carry. The imperfect is a verb that has happened continuously in the past. For example, I was carrying. And the perfect tense is an action that's fully completed in the past. For example, I carried. Just notice the difference in translation, but you should be familiar with all of these already. I know we're just reaffirming the same points of grammar that we've met so far, but it's crucial that we're confident with these endings before moving on with more complicated Latin. So without further ado, let's have a look at personal verb endings. The present tense ends in ost, mus, tis, unt. The imperfect is bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. And notice the repetition of ba in the imperfect. And the perfect tense ends in e isti it, imus istis errant. And perfects can be recognised by the letters V, S, U or X before the personal ending. So I promise you this is the final slide before we move on. Just to consolidate, I would like you to have a go at translating the following verbs. Consider their meaning, the personal ending and the tense. So pause the video and have a go at translating accurately the following words. Okay, let's go through the answers. Ambulamus is just an ordinary present tense and it means we walk or we are walking. Portant means they carry. Lacrimat means he, she or it cries or weeps. Portabatis is an imperfect recognised by the letters ba and it means you plural were carrying. And portavisti is a perfect tense and it means you singular carried. Well done if you got all of those right. Phew, I know that was some boring grammar, but we finally finished recapping, and now let's have a look at some more vocabulary. Canat means dines. Conspicit means catches sight of. Come means with. Facit means makes or does. Heri is yesterday. Ingens is huge. Intelligit means understands. Lacrimat is weeps or cries. Mortus means dead. Narrat means tells. Nacat is kills. Nihil means nothing. Omnis means all. Parat means prepares. Prope means near. Rogat means asks. Tacite is quietly. Tamen is however. Teret is frightens. And Walde means very much. Finally, before we move on to some examples, let's have a look at the topic of suppressed subjects. So as you already know, Latin is an inflected language, which means the endings of verbs change their meaning. The word order is also much more flexible. So for example, in English, the sentence, "the boy sees the dog," cannot be written with the words in a different order. If it was written, "the boy dog the sees," that wouldn't make sense. However, in Latin, that same sentence could be written in 6 different ways, and it would still make sense. So when translating, you should always look for the subject, and then the verb, and then the object in Latin. So in Latin, the subject is not always repeated in the second sentence if it's describing the same person. For example, Quintus Caecilium visitabat, Willam intravit. So this means Quintus was visiting Caecilius. He entered the house. This is a slightly shorter way of writing the same thing, because we don't need to repeat Quintus, which is the noun, again in the second sentence, because the verb ending tells us who is doing the verb. Finally, we've covered all of the grammar. Let's move on to some examples. Amicus Caecilium visitabat, Willam intravit. This means the friend was visiting Caecilius. He entered the house. Amicus poculum inspexit, Winum gustavit. This means the friend caught sight of the wine cup. He tasted the wine. And finally, Grumio est in colina, Canam coquit. This means Grumio is in the kitchen. He cooks dinner. I know we've only looked at 3 sentences together, but the grammatical topics are ones which you should be familiar with, and I want to try to keep the length of the video around 10 minutes. So I'm going to let you have a go at the following 3 sentences. So pause the video and have a go at those. Okay, let's go through the answers. Grumio in colina laborabat, Canam parabat. This means Grumio was working in the kitchen. He was preparing dinner. Metella non erat in villa, in horto ambulabat. This means Metella was not in the house. She was walking in the garden. And finally, Mercator Caecilium visitabat, Willam intravit. This means the merchant was visiting Caecilius. He entered the house. So notice in all of these sentences that the subject of the sentence is not repeated again in the next. But you can tell who's doing the verb by the verb ending. Okay, so we're now going to look at the first few lines of the story Decans from the Cambridge Latin course. I'm only going to translate the first few lines just because I'm conscious about the length of the video, but hopefully this will still be enough to provide sufficient knowledge to the topics that we've discussed today. postquam felix fabulam narravit, Caecilius et hospites plauserunt. After Felix told the story, Caecilius and the guests applauded. Tum omnes tacebant, et aliam fabulam expectabant. Then they were all silent, and they were waiting for another story. Subito clamorem audi verunt. Suddenly they heard a shout. Omnes ad atrium festina verunt, ubi clemens starbant. They all hurried to the atrium, where Clemens was standing.
Caecilius. Hercule, quid est? Cur tu clamorem facis? Good heavens, what is it? Why do you shout?
Clemens, decens decens. This means decens decens.
Caecilius. Quid est? What is it?
Clemens, decens est mortus. Decens is dead.
Omnes, quid mortus eheu?
This means everyone. What? Dead? Oh no.
Duo servi intrant.
Two slaves enter.
Caecilius, quid dicis?
Caecilius, what are you saying? So we've now covered stage 7 of the Cambridge Latin course. So let's summarise. We've recapped the 3 tenses we've met so far. So the present tense ends in ost, mus, tis, unt. The imperfect ends in bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. And the perfect tense endings are isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. So these should already be familiar to you. Finally, we've met the new grammatical topic of suppressed subjects, which is where the subject of a sentence is not repeated in the next one, but you know who's doing the verb by the verb ending. I will leave the slide on the screen for a few moments longer, just in case you want to further consolidate your knowledge of the endings. But please join me in my next video, where I will be explaining stage 8 of the Cambridge Latin course.